Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Recently I've been reflecting on some of the valedictory speeches that we've heard in this place, and it's not going to be long before I have to stand up and give mine. And I don't want to look back on my time in this place and thought I should have tried harder, I should have shown a bit more political courage, I should have stuck my neck out a little bit, I shouldn't have played it so safe. Before I got into Parliament, I decided that I would try and tackle some tough issues, some of the issues that in fact drove me to come to this place. You see, there's always a reason not to do stuff. When you find yourself in this chamber, there are always reasons not to do things. You might be worried about offending a particular group. You might be worried that your own constituency doesn't support your views on an issue. You can do it later. Maybe it's not core business. Maybe it's a fringe issue. Maybe it's an issue that distracts from the main game. There's always a reason not to do something. It's also easy to get caught up in this place, the fishbowl that is Parliament House, and start to think that the views in here, in fact, reflect the views of the community. One thing I've learnt over my short time in this place is they don't. They don't on so many issues. And that's why I felt compelled to act over the past fortnight on two difficult but important social issues. They're two issues that have one thing in common. They've got a profound influence over the lives of people who are sick, who are suffering, and who are dying. They have this in common. They represent the individual stories of people who have shown tremendous courage, tremendous dignity in coming out and speaking about things that often we feel very uncomfortable about talking about. Those two issues are the issues of medicinal cannabis and dying with dignity. I was very moved to hear the story of the Haslam family. Lucy Haslam, a former nurse, and her husband, who's a policeman with a long history of drug law enforcement. They live in Tamworth in New South Wales. Their son, Dan Haslam, he's 24. He has terminal bowel cancer. He's had it for a number of years. And his suffering has been compounded by horrific and chronic nausea, by weight loss, by pain. He tried a number of drugs and he eventually resorted to medicinal cannabis. It had a significant effect on his nausea, where other drugs failed. It helped improve his appetite and weight loss. Lucy and her husband made the decision that the law would not stand in the way of them performing their duty as parents and relieving the suffering of their son. So they became criminals by ensuring that their son had access to medicinal cannabis. But more than that, they've made the decision to go public, a courageous decision, and to campaign for reform so that other families don't experience the same diabolical circumstances that mean that you either obey the law or you watch someone suffer needlessly. Why is it that they're in this pernicious situation where instead of getting a script from a doctor to get access to medication that relieves them of their suffering, that they've got to find a dealer and purchase a product of uncertain strength and purity? Why is it? It makes no sense. At face value, this is a medication like no other. Many of our most successful medications come from plants, from digitalis that provides relief for people with serious heart conditions. We grow poppies in this country so that we can provide hospitals and doctors' surgery with important pain-relieving medication. And yet when it comes to cannabis and the potential remedies that it offers, we have a blind spot. Well, I hosted an event in Parliament last week, and Lucy was good enough to travel here and to speak to a number of parliamentarians. She spoke alongside Alex Wodak, a doctor who through clinical practice has become an expert on the real medical potential of cannabis. The science is clear, the jury's in. It is a medication that has been demonstrated in a number of clinical trials to be of significant benefit for nausea, for weight loss, to stimulate appetite, for muscle spasticity, and for some sources of pain. One of the most encouraging aspects of that event was that we saw members of Parliament from right across the political divide attend and show an openness and a willingness to engage in the evidence, something that is far too often lacking in this place. Ultimately, they concluded one thing, and that is that it is cruel to deny people access to this effective treatment. The second issue is even more sensitive, and that is the issue of dying with dignity. It's an issue that essentially ensures that we each and every one of us, have access to choice over the circumstances of our own deaths. It's a difficult issue. There is a taboo around discussing death in this country. But I've got news for people. Death's contagious. We're all going to catch it. It's something we are all going to face. The real question is this, and it's a tough question. As a doctor, I wrestled with it because you are balancing your responsibilities to give somebody the choice that they seek in relieving their pain and suffering, which comes into tension with your responsibility to try and prolong life. Well, ultimately, my primary responsibility as a medical practitioner is to respect people's wishes about their pain and their suffering, and to ensure that they have the choice around when that pain and suffering becomes so intolerable that no amount of medical help will relieve it. Now, given the choice that we have when it comes to dying, how many of us would choose to end our lives in a sterile hospital room, in unbearable pain, drugged into a semi-conscious state, poked full of holes and tubes, lying there drowning in our own secretions, gasping for air, when the other alternative may be a peaceful death at home with your family, a death where you have a very deeply emotional goodbye, where you're able to say the things to your loved ones that you want to say, a death that is unhurried, that involves drifting off peacefully, but being surrounded by the people you love and the memories that make us who we are. But for people in Australia, that choice is not an option. In fact, even worse, it's illegal. And so yesterday I hosted an event in this building where we heard from 3 people with a terminal illness with very, very powerful stories. We heard from Peter Short, a man who has recurrent esophageal cancer, a man in his 50s, a successful businessman who has decided that he wants to choose the circumstances over which he dies. We heard from Max Bromson, a man with metastatic bone cancer who sometimes describes the pain that he's experiencing as unbearable, off the scale. We heard from Kath Ringwood, a lady with leukaemia and breast cancer, who made it very clear that her experience as a palliative care nurse ensured that she would never choose a slow, drowning death by pneumonia, which is one of the options that may befall her. One thing that all these people had in common was that they were living their life to its fullest potential right now, and that all of them wanted to ensure that they had the most fulfilling and long lives possible. But simply having the choice of knowing that they had control over the circumstances in which they died made their current journey a less painful one. That simply having that choice was empowering. And more importantly, these people, in the final months they have left, have made it very clear that they want to spend their time ensuring that everybody is offered that choice. Again, on the face of it, one would assume it's the most basic of human rights, the control over our own deaths, the ability to seek medical assistance in seeking to exercise that control, a control that hurts nobody else, a decision that's a very personal one. It's classic liberal philosophy, respect for the rights of the individual. As one of the people said yesterday, is our life the property of the state or does it belong to us? We all come to this place often with the best intentions. We come here with a good dose of political capital. We've earned that political capital. It's trust that's invested in each of us by our communities. We build on it by showing integrity, by working with others, by being responsive to the people who put us here. We show it and earn it by demonstrating leadership and by ensuring that we have the nation's best interests at heart, not our own. But that political capital is of no consequence if we're not going to ensure that we exercise what we can to get change and reform through this parliament that will impact so directly on the lives of the people that I've heard from over recent weeks. There'll always be barriers. It's a difficult issue to talk about. It's not the main game. It's a fringe issue. There's a very powerful religious lobby in the parliament. We've got a toxic political environment. It's very hard to get past the political divide that separates us here. But it's incumbent on each and every one of us to do what the Australian people put us here to do. That is to listen to them, to not dodge tough issues, and to get these reforms through. I have to say that I've been encouraged by the huge support, again, from across the political divide, on hearing about my campaign to introduce dying with dignity laws in the federal parliament. A tremendous response. And in fact, Alana McTiernan has indicated that she wants to co-support any legislation that ensures that people have access to that choice. On the issue of medicinal cannabis, Sharman Stone and Melissa Park, who co-convene the group that I'm involved with that helped bring Lucy Haslam to the parliament, have indicated that they want to work to get this reform through. They want to look beyond the partisan blinkers that so often blind us to the opportunities that we have here, the opportunities to do good things for people who are dying, who are sick, and who are suffering. And it's our responsibility to do that job. Ultimately, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because of the support we've already received. And I'm optimistic because I know one thing. Even though there are barriers, there is one thing with both of these issues that politicians can't ignore, and that is that they have overwhelming public support. And there is one thing that politicians in this place do, and that is listen to the community sentiment. When that voice becomes so overwhelming, so loud, so strong, politicians can't ignore it. And those voices are growing, they're becoming louder, they now have access to this place, and ultimately we owe a duty to listen to them. Thank you.